Welcome back, YouTube, to Stretch's Tips, Tricks, and Tools. While we're waiting to get the muffler to put back on this thing, I went ahead and put the fuel tank on. I've got the throttle lever connected. Air filter mounts on. We're waiting for an air filter to go on here and a muffler. Once we get those on there, we can take it outside, put a little bit of water in it, put a little bit of gas in it, crank her up and see if she runs. Can't wait for that. Hello YouTube, welcome back. Well, due to the miracles of modern technology, I lost all the footage of the spark plug repair and removing the rusted out nuts off of the exhaust system. As you can see, there wasn't much left of them, but I was able to save the threads. But let me show you what I did with the repairs, even though you can't follow it on video. Turns out that the spark plug that was jammed in the hole, apparently it was either working its way out or it never got put in properly to begin with. But anyway, it was jammed in there and it had a lot of carbon and stuff built up to keep it from screwing in all the way, but I was able to get the threads cleaned out. What I was going to use was this thread chaser for spark plugs. It's a KD tool. It's, let me see if I can find the number on it. It's a number 730 KD. It's for 18 millimeter plugs, like on the old Ford products, or the 14 millimeter, which is the most common. But I couldn't get this thread chaser in here and be able to get a socket on it to turn it. So what I ended up doing was just getting a metric tap, a 14 millimeter tap, and I think it's 14 by 125. Yeah, 14 by 1.25 threads. And I use that tap to go in there and clean up the threads. The plug wasn't cross-threaded, it was just kind of jammed in there with a bunch of gunk. So once I cleaned it out, the plug screwed in real well. I also used an 8-point socket to turn this because you couldn't really get a tap wrench in there to turn it. So if you don't have any 8 millimeter sockets, sometimes a 12 millimeter will fit on here, or a 12-point socket will fit on here. Like some of your sockets are 12-point, some are 6-point, and then they have the 8-point that fit the square nuts. So if you're lucky, you might be able to find a 12-point that would fit this to be able to turn it with. But these come in real handy. Sometimes when you're in a tight spot, you can use a socket to get on here and then turn it. If you haven't ever seen a 8-point socket, they look like this. They're 8-sided, and they'll fit on the square tap real well if you can get them in the right position. They'll fit on there to turn it with. Also, for this particular tap, a 3/8 12-point socket fits on there, and you could turn it with that if you had to. So there's other ways to run these taps even without a tap wrench. So keep that in mind next time you have to do a tapping job. I also lost all the video on taking this muffler off. These are some new 8 millimeter stainless steel nuts I got to put it on with. The threads are still good, but there was a lot of work. I had to heat it up with a torch, wiggle it back and forth several times. Excuse me, the inside one here was real tough to get to because I didn't have a lot of room. When you had that piece of muffler, this piece of muffler sticking up here in your way, you didn't have a lot of room to work to get in there. I don't know what happened with the video, but it all got lost. So anyway, it wasn't really that hard of a job, but in case you didn't know it, sometimes if you have a nut that's really rusted on real bad and you can't really get a hold of it to turn it, or it's really stuck, if you heat it up and then wiggle a little bit, sometimes that'll break that rust bond loose, and then you can get it off. and lube it up good with some WD-40 or some kind of lube, some of that Air-Crawl or whatever you happen to have, and just keep working it until it starts to loosen up, and finally you can get it off. If you take your time and you're careful, you'll save the threads. I was afraid that these studs were going to break and I'd have to replace them, and now they didn't break, so they're good. They were rather rusty, and so I took an 8mm die, a thread die, and I went down there and cleaned them up real good, so now they're in good shape. So now we're ready to put the muffler on. This is the new muffler I got. I got it off of Amazon. I think it was like 14 bucks. It's probably a clone. It's not a genuine Honda muffler, but it fits on here right. Once you get the gasket on here, it just slips on. Then you got the two nuts to hold it, which are not easy to get to. Yeah. Get you another. Let me get you another angle so you'll be able to see what I'm doing down here. As you can see, these nuts are not too easy to get to. I believe those are 13mm. Yeah, 13mm. Okay, now she's ready to go. Well, we're just about ready to fire this thing up and test it out, and then I realized that the wiring here is all disconnected. There's no wires hooked to this on-off switch, and I'm thinking, if I get it started, how am I going to turn it off? Well, let me show you what I did. I got on eBay, and I was able to they had these switches. They're two for like, I'm sorry, it wasn't eBay, I think it was Amazon, and there were like two of them. You get two switches for like $6. So I got a new switch for it. This one's a little bit different than the factory one. It's got an extra wire you have to hook up to a ground, but these old switches, they just pry out of here and just pushed in here, just like that. You can see this one here is in sad shape. I'm kind of curious about how it works, so I'm thinking about maybe taking it apart later and make a video about that. I don't see any place where, oh, right here's where the wire hooks on. They've just cut the wire off. Cut it off right there. So this one here, it's got a little notch here where the index is on, and it just pushes in. So they say. It's a tight fit, I can tell you that. Let me give it a little persuasion with this rubber hammer. There we go. Good as new. This wire here, we need to hook to this terminal right underneath here. And then these wires are real simple to hook together, and they're they are I guess anyway, one's a male, one's a female, and let me get something to clean those up real quick. This is just a little piece of Scotch-Brite. Clean that terminal up. This is the one that comes from the ignition, and it goes to the male terminal here. And then the one that comes from the oil, low oil warning, is the male terminal that goes in here. It's a female connector. And that's all there is to wiring this thing up. The way this thing works, when you have the switch on, it's an open circuit. When you turn it to off, it makes the connection and it grounds the ignition so that the engine will stop. What we're going to do now is get my ohm meter and we're going to test it to make sure it works. This is my Fluke 88 meter. Set it to the ohm rating. We'll put it on alert so you can hear it. And it'll make a connection like that. First, we're going to go with to the wire, and we're going to go to a ground. And as you can see, that's off. That's on. When you turn it off, it completes the circuit. When it's on, it doesn't. So all we need to do, put this bolt back in right here and hold this wire on there, and we'll be good to go because the system's working. Hopefully, hopefully when we get the gas in there and it starts up, we'll be able to turn it off. So we'll have to wait and see. As soon as we get the air filter, that's all we're waiting on. We can get this puppy out there and give it a test drive. So thanks for following me on this channel. If you want to subscribe to my channel to get more videos, you can. There's probably 1 or 2 more videos we're going to do on this engine. I'm thinking about maybe next to take this water pump apart and see what it looks like inside, and see if it's worth trying to pump water with it. We'll have to find out. Anyway, thanks for watching. Remember, work smarter, not harder. See you next time.